Arizona is most likely going towards the Democratic Party because I think the quality of candidate that Mark Kelly is just insurmountable at this point. Welcome back to Luis Discusses Everything. In today's video, we're going to discuss my final 2022 midterm election prediction forecast. So I'm going to give you the results that I think will be palpable on November 8th of this year. As of the day of this recording, it's November 5th, 2022. This will be the last time I post my final prediction for both the House and the Senate in the 2022 U.S. election midterm season. So, as it is customary, right? Last week I gave you my prediction as of I think Sunday last week, and I gave the Republicans both the Senate and the House. That is still almost true in the sense that, numbers since that date, numbers have just been looking better and better for the Republican Party on both the House and the Senate. According to the 538 politics forecast, Republicans have a 55% chance of capturing the Senate, and the Republicans also have an 84% chance of capturing the House. And in most of the scenarios, or the most common scenario is Republicans win both chambers with a 54% chance of winning both chambers, and only a 30% chance of Democrats winning the Senate versus Republicans winning the House, and much less chance of Democrats winning both chambers or the reverse happening. And I more or less agree with this forecast for a number of reasons that I will name. We also have the governorship forecast, which hasn't changed that much. If anything, it has gotten better for the Republican Party. But we're mainly going to focus our attention on the Senate and the House. For the governorship has less of an impact than the House and the Senate. So starting off with the Senate forecast, we see that, as I mentioned before, that Republicans are slightly favored to win the Senate. According to the 538 politics forecast, that's not only true in 538's case, but it's also true in the overall consensus amongst all forecasters. In the consensus, they believe that this will be the most likely scenario, with Democrats holding 49 and Republicans holding 49. I have a different opinion as to that, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's start off with the state of Georgia. I'm going to show you the average of polls and let you know how far we are into it. As of November 4th, I think that was November 4th was the most recent poll. We have in the latest slate of polls, which go up to October 31st to November 2nd. November 2nd being the last time or the last date in which polls have come up from Georgia. In most of these polls, you have seen Herschel Walker up in the polls, but there's been a gross inconsistency because we've seen that yes, in a lot of these polls you see Walker up, but you also see a similar number of polls having Warnock up, and in the aggregate of polls, you have Walker up by a minuscule 0.1%, which is incredibly close. I think as of Friday, recording this on a Saturday, as of Friday, November 4th, early voting closed in Georgia, and it was a record amount, higher than it was in 2018, higher than in any moment in Georgia's midterm election history, which is incredibly remarkable and shows you just how historic these midterm elections will be. Now, if you're a Democrat, you might think, okay, higher volume of voters means, okay, we're automatically going to be benefited. But that's not necessarily the case. It could equally be true that Republicans are going to be benefited from that. This race will most likely go to a runoff, and that's how I have it on my forecast. I think that Georgia, right now, Walker has the advantage, but I will characterize this after I go through the other states. But basically, I think Georgia right now, let me uncharacterize these ones, but Georgia right now could go to either one, so I'm going to leave it uncharacterized after I go through each and every one of the states, because it really depends on the other races, and I'll explain it in a second. Let's move on to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, you have a very similar scenario ever since the previous month, where like Fetterman's health issues were becoming more of a problem. He has gone substantially down, all the way from, I think the highest point was like an 12 point margin, all the way down to 0.4%, and the lead has shifted. And we've had, in the last 3 polls, we've had Oz leading consistently in those polls. Of course, Fetterman still has a bit of an advantage in the sense that the same thing that's been going on in Georgia has been happening in Pennsylvania, where you've seen, Oz up in a lot of these polls, but also Fetterman. So it's been like inconsistent in terms of its support, and all of these pollsters have been high-rated pollsters, and in each, none of them show consistent results. And in the ones where you have Oz up, is the ones that include third-party candidates. Not in all of them, of course. Trafalgar Group has them up by 2%. Marist College has Fetterman up by 6%. So it's crazy. It's crazy how wild, like how much the margins have shifted between polls. So this is another race where it's really like a pure toss-up. Like, it's very hard for me to see what's going on in that scenario, right? For anybody to go on in that scenario. Similar thing is going on in Nevada, where you have equally as close a race, but I think in this case, Laxalt has more of an advantage. But even in the most recent poll, you have Cortez Masto up by 1%. It's remarkable to think that in the most recent poll, you have Cortez Masto leading by 1%, even though in other polls you have Laxalt leading by other percentage points. If this trend continues, I may shift my notion of who's going to win in that state. Similar thing in Arizona. Arizona has been more of a consistent race for Kelly, but the first couple of polls showing them even has shown up, but Laxalt has not led in any single poll in this race, but the polls have been close enough to get this race down to a 1.9% lead for Mark Kelly. And this brings me back to the map. I think that out of these races, let's start with the last one that I characterize. I think Arizona is most likely going towards the Democratic Party, because I think the quality of candidate that Mark Kelly is just insurmountable at this point. It could go either way, of course, because this is a tilt margin. I think it's less than 1% that he's going to win, but I can see him winning in that race. Similarly, in the race of Nevada, I still see Catherine Cortez Masto losing that race. Yes, the most recent poll was in her favor, but still, the race is has been shifting too much in favor of Laxalt for it to be consequentially different for Cortez Masto. So that race, I think, will go tilt on the Republican Party. In the case of Pennsylvania, that is such a hard call. I have to say, that is such a hard call. But I think the fact that a lot of polls have also gone in favor of Fetterman, even after the debate, leads me to believe, and I could be wrong, but leads me to believe that he will win the Pennsylvania race by margins so close we can't even fathom. It's definitely going to be by a tilt margin. So I agree with the consensus. This is a shift from my last prediction, right, where I had it going through Oz. But I think polls coming out after the debate, where he had a horrible debate performance, still show, and these are high quality polls, still show Fetterman up by even 6 points, which is remarkable to think about. Candidate equality, right? That leaves me with Georgia. I think Georgia will go to a runoff election, and I think this will decide the fate of the Senate. If we have a scenario like this, where the Democrats are just one seat away from winning the Senate, I think Georgia goes tilt blue, but very, very close margin, because they'll have momentum to go forward. If the Democrats lose Pennsylvania, which I think that could happen, then I think Georgia would also be lost. But this is my final election prediction for the Senate. I think the Democrats will hold on to the Senate only if they hold on to either Pennsylvania or Nevada, right? That is a big if. It could easily go on the Republican side, but I think this is the most likely scenario at this point from my perspective. Let's go then to the other last prediction, which is the House interactive map. As you can see, they still have, things have only gotten worse for Democrats in this one. They have a minimum of 222 seats going for the Republican Party. That's according to the forecast consensus. I agree with the forecast consensus. I even would give Republicans up to, I wouldn't be surprised if they have 237 seats, which is what I said in my last forecast. But I think 222 is probably a fair assessment, given the headwinds and the headwinds of the polls in favor of Republican Party. I think most of these races that are a rendered toss-up, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go in favor of the Republican Party. I think a similar scenario in the governor's interactive map, where you have most of these races going to the Republican Party. These are categorized by me, of course. But I think this doesn't stray too far from the consensus, which is toss-up on all these races. But I think most of these races will definitely go towards the Republican Party. The only shift, I would say, is Oregon, where I think is going in favor of the Democratic Party, right? Because it's a flashing blue state, right? I don't think it's going to be that far in favor of the Republican Party. I think in this case, yes, it was close, but it will go in favor of the Democratic Party. The other ones that I've categorized, such as Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin, will all go to the Republican Party by a tilt margin. In Kansas, even though it's a closer race, I see it going for the Democratic Party. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends. Let me know in the comments below, who do you think is going to win the Senate? Is it going to be Republicans or Democrats? In the case of the House, who do you think is going to not only win the House, but by what margin? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.